Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Rati here. So in this video, I'm back with a book review again. And this time I'm going to review a slightly different kind of a book. And usually for this channel, I've been reviewing mostly fiction books. If I do review non-fiction books at all, it's mostly inspirational and motivational books. Basically a bit light-hearted stuff. But this particular book, which I'm going to review, it's sort of heavier, thought-oriented, and tilts towards the academic side. So I hope you're going to enjoy this review as well, as much you enjoy watching reviews of my fiction books, my fiction book recommendations, and my motivational book recommendations. So let's get started. So today for this video, I'm going to review Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power, 5 Battlegrounds by Rajiv Malhotra. So as the name suggests, it's a book on artificial intelligence, and I wouldn't call it a 100% academic book, but it has a lot of references and a lot of meticulous research has gone into the making of this book. There are pages and pages, I think 40-50 pages of references towards the end of the book. So this is an academic book. The reason I'm not calling it a 100% academic book is because the author has taken certain creative liberties, and there are a lot of inputs, from the author's own side and, the side. There are certain elements of science fiction as well in the book. Again, all of this has been supported by academic references, but I think this book is quite original and inventive, and it's a seminal work, which is why I refuse to I'm reluctant to classify it in the list of run-of-the-mill academic books, but it's definitely more leaning towards the academic side. So before I start talking about the book and the content of the book, just a little bit about Rajiv Malhotra. Those of you who do not know about Rajiv Malhotra is a world famous, he's a renowned author, intellectual, and a pioneer in the research of civilization. And he also works on the points of intersection between civilization and technology. Rajiv Malhotra lives in the US, and he has an organization called Infinity Foundation. You can check out the website of Infinity Foundation. They also have a YouTube channel called Infinity Foundation Official. So Rajiv Malhotra, for a long time, I think for the past couple of decades at least, has been working on issues which are central to Hinduism, issues central to Hindu dharma, Hindu culture, and civilizational ethos. And he looks at the international discourse on Hinduism, international discourse on India. He looks at everything from a highly critical perspective. And when you read Rajiv Malhotra, you have to sort of leave your preconceived notions behind when you read Rajiv Malhotra, because if you're used to a kind of a communist leftist point of view, then you might be biased against Rajiv Malhotra. But like I said, Rajiv Malhotra is a scientific author. So if you read him, if you leave your biases outside when you read Rajiv Malhotra, then you're definitely going to get a refreshing perspective by reading his works. Now, a bit of context of this book. So this book is, the main topic here is artificial intelligence technology. So Rajiv Malhotra actually comes from a tech background. At one point of his career, he owned more than 20 tech companies all over the world. And I think it was somewhere when he was in his mid-40s. It was at that point of time that he actually left the tech world and, devoted his life to the cause of research on civilizations and civilizational and cultural issues related to Hinduism, related to Hindu dharma. But obviously, because he comes from a tech background and his expertise is in that area, therefore, how technology interacts with culture, society, and geopolitics at large has been a major focus thrust of his research, of his scholarship, and that's what this book, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power, focuses on. So I'm not going to go into the summary of the book because it's a huge book, and if I start summarizing the book, it's just going to never end. So just a couple of main points about this book I'm going to mention. Firstly, it's a seminal work. It's the first of its kind work on this subject, on, a subject related to technology, artificial intelligence, that actually looks at artificial intelligence from a multidisciplinary perspective. So in understanding artificial intelligence, the author combines diverse approaches and diverse, perspectives from multiple disciplines, be it cultural studies, literary theory, social sciences, different disciplines of social sciences such as political science, geopolitics, economics, history, sociology, anthropology, media and communication studies, and uh, journalism, and of course technology, which is the focus point of this book. But I, like I said, it's the first of its kind book that actually gives such a vast multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary perspective on a subject like artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, the name itself is kind of like, it immediately scares of anybody who doesn't come from a science or a tech background. And I think most of the books on artificial intelligence are full of a lot of technical jargon, and they're written from that kind of 100% scientific perspective. So it's different from somebody from a non-science background to understand the basics of artificial intelligence using those books. So this book, like I said, is written from combines so many diverse approaches. So it's written, I would say, it's written from a social sciences perspective, despite the fact that it's written by a scientist. It's written from a social sciences perspective. So I think it's a valuable resource for anybody studying any humanities subject. If you're doing research in the humanities, it's a valuable resource for people from a non-science background, for people from humanities and even commerce backgrounds, to understand the core, the basic concepts of artificial intelligence, and to look at the field of artificial intelligence critically. So if you're a researcher, like I said, especially in the humanities, you have to pick up this book. And this book gives you a lot of, exciting research ideas, exciting areas of research for the points of intersection between technology and society, culture, politics, geopolitics, especially in the context of India. The book does not only talk about India, but a large part of the book focuses on India. So I think as a social science researcher, you would definitely find this book, giving you a lot of new perspectives on AI and the impact of AI on society and culture in the 21st century. Now, like I said, the book is very long and I don't want to go into the summary of the book, but just a couple of main points. The first point, the first most important thing that the book picks up and explains to you very lucidly is the fact that, AI, how AI is not a disinterested technology, the way AI is marketed. And there's so much of enthusiasm about it. It makes most of us lay people think that, AI is something which is benevolent, and, it's just kind of very progressive. And we kind of look at, AI in a very non-critical manner. Because being from a non-scientific background, we do not really understand, the how it works. So we tend to look at it in this very hunky-dory, rosy manner. Even the governments, the government of India, for that matter, tends to, talk about like digital India and AI in these very kind of like, in this very optimistic, this kind of, it paints us very rather rosy scenario without looking at the pitfalls of AI. So Rajiv Malhotra's book, the first main point that it makes is that AI has its own inherent biases, and those who are in the power structure, within the global system, they can actually, and they have been using AI to their own advantage to disseminate a certain ideology, to disseminate a certain viewpoint. So, for example, when you search something on Google, on the Google search engine, most of us take those search results at face value. Whatever the Google is showing it, you take those results at face value, and you think you're doing good enough research by doing Google search and checking out the results of your results on your own. But how many of us actually go beyond the first few pages of the Google, right? Most of us, our research is limited to, let's say, maybe the maximum first 10 pages of the Google. And that's how the Google biases us. When we are searching a particular topic, then the kind of articles, the kind of material that the Google shows at the top is, of course, is defined by two things. A, it's defined by commercial considerations, and B, it's defined by what is known as algorithmic bias. Now, what is algorithmic bias? Basically, all these technologies, the Google search engine, the AI chatbots, all these technologies run on AI technologies, run on something which is called an algorithm. And these algorithms, AI algorithms, are trained. And when they are trained, they're fed with huge data sets, and that's how these algorithms are trained. And that's how your AI chatbot, it's fed with huge amounts of data, and that's why the chatbots are able to answer your questions, write essays for you. That's how Google is sort of showing you all these queries. So when these AI chatbots are trained, it's Rajiv Malhotra argues in the book that it's not a disinterested process, but it's a process in which number of stakeholders are involved. So in the training of the chatbots itself, the biases can be are introduced at different points of time. The data sets itself can be biased. So if the AI algorithm, is exposed to only a certain kind of data, then of course, the kind of knowledge they internalize, it will be unidimensional and biased. The bias of the developer, whoever has developed that AI technology, whoever has developed that AI algorithm, the bias of the developer can also enter into the picture, making that AI algorithm biased. For example, this whole debate about AI Gemini has been going on, in the context of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the way he answered the AI Gemini, answered that question on PM Modi. And when he answered the same question on ex-US President Donald Trump, how the perspective was different, and how the how Gemini was biased, Google Gemini was biased when answering the query on Prime Minister Modi. But not just that, with regard to different issues, Gemini's political biases have been pointed out by users and intellectuals all over the world, not just in the context of India and PM Modi. So this is just an example of, how AI is not a disinterested entity, but it actually has algorithmic biases, and therefore, stakeholders can use those biases to propagate a certain kind of mindset, and to propagate a certain ideology, to influence public opinion, and even to manipulate elections and change governments all across the world. So the point this book is trying to make is that AI is becoming a very powerful sort of a weapon, if you might call it, in the hands of the global establishment, whoever controls the chains of the big tech, because the big tech, of course, is not a disinterested entity. Again, the big tech is connected to all sorts of different global stakeholders who have huge stakes in political systems across the world. So this is something which is definitely worth thinking about. That we cannot just blindly look at technology in digital technologies in terms of empowering our lives, but we have to look at these from a critical perspective, that these are equally capable of manipulating our lives. When the television came, similar kind of theory was being developed about television, and at that time people were dismissing. But now we know for sure, and we call television the idiot box, and we know for sure that the television can indeed do a lot of brainwashing, if we as audience are not applying our own senses, applying our own critical faculty. So it's the similar thing with digital media now, and that's the point that AI technologies, that artificial intelligence has reached now. It's a technology, it's a field which is undergoing a lot of development. So this is first point. The second point which Rajiv Malhotra makes, and this is in the context of India, is that India is on the verge of becoming, or rather India risks becoming, a digital colony, a digital slave of, he categorically mentions China and the US. The book quotes a lot of data, and a lot of data, a lot of factual examples to tell you how China and the US are the leading global powers when it comes to artificial intelligence, and India comes nowhere in the top scenario when it comes to AI. India's contribution to original inventions, original developments in the field of AI is minuscule. And it's sad, the book argues, that despite the fact that it's maximum, a major percentage of people, who are sitting in top-notch positions in all these prestigious international big tech companies, they are actually Indians, they're Indian in origin. It's the Indian brain power which is contributing to the scientific developments of AI in all these companies. But Indians are, all migrating to these countries and, just sort of working literally, even if they are getting paid millions of dollars, they're literally working as a laborer, but they're not contributing anything to the development of indigenous technologies back home, back in India. What else explains that we in India, unlike China, we still do not have anything, despite our capabilities, we do not have anything. We haven't yet developed our own version of the Google search engine, our own version of WhatsApp, or our own homegrown version of Facebook, for that matter. There's so many startups working at a very small scale, and they're struggling, and nobody really, sort of gives, even the government doesn't give so many incentives to the Indian apps, to the Indian app developers. So that's a big lacuna in the Indian context, the book argues. And the book is, in that sense, an eye opener that all the euphoria which is surrounding the Digital India campaign and the development of digital infrastructure in India, it's kind of not very well positioned, because at the end of the day, the government of India is largely dependent on the infrastructure of the Western countries, on the likes of Google or on the likes of Microsoft, for carrying its Digital India initiative. So we are not innovating anything. We are just becoming a kind of, an assembly ground of the West, and we're becoming a dumping ground of the West, where the West uses our brains to develop these technologies, but then we pay a lot of price for these technologies. So the West, essentially looks at India, the US, or be it US or China, not just the West, essentially look at India in terms of a market. So all this hullabaloo about India having so many Facebook users and social media users and this potential and that potential, at the end of the day, it does not benefit the country really in terms of innovation. But India is being looked at a market. So if India doesn't take, the government doesn't take proactive steps, to sort of develop strong indigenous technologies and decouple itself from from over dependence on the Western technological ecosystem, then it's the day is not far when we will again become a digital colony of the West, the author argues. So this is the second point, that India risks becoming a digital colony of the of not the West specifically, but not the West, but the US and China specifically. And this brings me to the third most important point which the book is making, and this is something which should concern all of us. Because we use social media literally 24 into 7 these days. So the book, again, the book is providing, a lot of evidence, a lot of facts. So nothing is being said on the basis of speculation. Nothing is being said out of the blue. So the third point that should concern, like I said, all of us is the fact that the data of Indians is at stake. Our personal data is very vulnerable because we are using, all sorts of sites, all sorts of apps. And whenever we use any app or whenever we use any website, all our personal details, all our personal data, our ethnicity, our age, this and that, a lot of data is collected through most of these sites. And then this data is, processed using sophisticated algorithms. And this is again used to develop then this data is processed and it's used to develop highly sophisticated algorithms which can be used for anything. At a very basic level, this data is sold to marketing companies. So these marketing companies, they know all about our preferences, our personal preferences, our political preferences. So they can target us with, these social media sites can target us with all sorts of advertisements. They can use this data to sell us all sorts of products. That's the most basic use, but the most advanced and somewhat dangerous use of this kind of, data collection without any liability, without any responsibility, is that this data can be used to disrupt political systems of vulnerable countries like India, which has a huge user base and where there literally no regulations on these social media sites or these digital media companies collecting the private data of Indian citizens in huge numbers. So this can be actually used to disrupt the country's political system, to influence public opinion, to spread a civil war, and to eventually disrupt the democracy of the country. And we've seen numerous examples of that. So Rajiv Malhotra argues it's a very, very dangerous situation, and the government is simply not aware of these repercussions because the government is still in the phase of looking at artificial intelligence as a very benevolent technology. And whoever comes to a country in the garb of doing this research and that research, we willingly surrender our data. So this is the third important point that he's making, that Indian government actually needs to, sort of have a very strong policy governing the data of its citizens, and how the to prevent sort of digital media companies from exploiting the data, because they use this data to mint billions of dollars. So some kind of an agreement, international within the international framework, has to be reached between India and these Western countries, in which all of us, the citizens of India, who are also stakeholders in this process, where our data is being collected and monetized without our consent, without our knowledge, we also have some kind of stake in the process, and our data is not given away for free. So this, I think, is a very valid and important point. The fourth point that the book Artificial Intelligence is making is that, and this is one of the most interesting point that the book makes, although it's a bit difficult to understand, but it's in the context of AI and human consciousness. So AI, a lot of people think that AI, since AI does not embody human consciousness, AI doesn't have emotions like human beings do. So it cannot do a lot of, it has its limitations. It cannot do a lot of tasks like, for example, creative tasks and emotional tasks. But nowadays, the author argues, like, we are seeing that AI is actually doing a lot of emotional tasks and creative tasks. AI can write poetry, AI can make paintings, compose music, and AI also, can mimic human empathy and emotion to a near degree of perfection. That's why the concept of AI girlfriends and boyfriends all across the world is getting popular. These are online companions, and these are like near perfect versions, kind of like without any flaws. You can talk to them and they will be politically correct, and they will give you diverse opinions and all that, unlike human beings who have flaws. So the point that the book is making is that it does not matter if AI has consciousness or not, as long as AI can mimic human consciousness. And that's what should be of concern to us, that AI can mimic human consciousness. And as long as it can mimic human consciousness, it can be used, by the developers to sort of cater to our all sorts of fantasies, and to sell us all sorts of products, and to kind of essentially, brainwash us into becoming morons. And he uses very, very interesting term, moronization of the masses. So he ultimately, Rajiv Malhotra in this book depicts a kind of dystopia, or it's like an Orwellian dystopia. It reminded me of George Orwell's 1984. He predicts this Orwellian dystopia where everybody will, kind of all the masses will become kind of slaves to the AI, and there will be this different minuscule minority of very rich people, the guys who own this technology, and the big tech basically, who will function as the deep state all over the world. And all other individuals, most of us, who are even middle classes now, will get absolutely disempowered. And since AI would have progressed to such an extent that jobs will be very less, there'll be hardly any jobs, so all of us would get some kind of subsistence from the state to get by, but we'll be essentially powerless human beings. The AI would give us all these fantasies to keep us happy and hooked on all those virtual reality sets and headphones and all that. So the AI is going to give us all that apparatus, but essentially our lives are going to be controlled. We'll no longer have those kind of infinite possibilities in our life that we have this at this point of time. And the author also has this thesis that a majority of world population will be eliminated by that time, because there will be a lot of poverty, a lot of starvation, essentially, he says, because AI is going to take away a lot of jobs, and wealth is going to be concentrated in the hands of a few. But after the dystopia, he argues at some point of time, there's going to be an equilibrium is going to be emerge, where the society is going to be developed again, and much smaller population. But in between, he says, there's going to be a lot of flux and conflict. Now, this is a terrible, terrible scenario, and in all probability, we hope that this shouldn't happen. And I personally think this is an extreme view of AI. Because in the context of developing countries like India, for example, I don't think AI technology can even make inroads, at such a fast an extent. And then we also have, our own sort of, backup system. We have the way our society is structured. I think, AI is going to face resistance from that structure. So it's not that, the technology can lead to the modernization of the masses so soon. But I think the ideas that he's giving in this book are definitely sort of worth considering, and these are very serious ideas, and that's why I call it a seminal book, because nobody has really written about this from such a critical perspective, combining diverse approaches from different disciplines, and especially in the context of India, that how India stands to become a digital colony of the West if we don't invest in our own AI infrastructure, and just sort of blindly adopt whatever the American companies or the Chinese companies are pushing at us. So, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the content, please do press the like button, and please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.